One other subject that I believe really fits into why we're even sitting here, why we're talking about sovereignty in Israel from a Christian and a Jewish perspective, is that there is this awakening, this movement of the Spirit of God, of redemption, of things that are taking place. Why don't you share with us and for our audience, Sam, how you are recognizing this and what's taking place on the ground here in Israel at this very season of time?
Well, first of all, there's a tremendous movement of Christians coming to visit Israel and to pray for the country, to pray for Jerusalem. It's something that is really, I've seen that. I've been connected, for example, to Robert Stearns and Eagle's Wings, and I've seen how that has really grown into a major movement. I see the work that's been done by Pastor Hagee, and he actually has more members to his organization, Q5, than there are Jews in the United States. And I see this developing in the country of Norway, where they have less than 2,000 Jewish people there, yet they have a membership of a pro-Israel organization of over 11,000 people. And that's that beginning of that awakening. That is that connection that is very unique. So that's what I have seen. I've also seen the development here in Israel with the Christian Embassy and other organizations. Not all of them are totally aligned to what I would call the real pristine pre-Constantine way of looking at our faiths and our mutual connection and looking at what we share as opposed to what is different between us.
Right.
But it is all part of an awakening and a movement that is occurring that also is consistent with the country itself seeing sovereignty as a critical component of the developing and flowering of the state of Israel.
Speak a little bit more about some of that aspect that's taking place here in Israel, because we recognize that the nation was founded over 71 years ago, and there's been this delay of time. It's like something is hindering the full movement of sovereignty, but it seems like now the idea of having full restoration and sovereignty is gaining some traction in the Jewish people and the election and things. What are you noticing among your friends and colleagues and peers here in Israel?
Well, I don't want to turn this into a political discourse, but there's no doubt that President Trump had a significant impact by recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That was a seminal event. The fact is he was recognizing something that had already been voted upon by Congress beforehand. But the fact that he did not sign the waiver and that they opened up the embassy in Jerusalem and he fulfilled his promise, that put a tremendous wind into the sails for the sovereignty movement. Then he also applied, which should have been a long time ago again, but he applied finally Israeli sovereignty to the Golan Heights. We are now having discussions on the part of the American ambassador, as well as their main special envoy, Jason Greenblatt, and the president, about the whole area of Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and how that's not going to be removed as part of any quote-unquote final status agreement. And so those are all the beginnings of it. Within the country itself, there is an understanding, and some of this is just practical, that trying to negotiate from a position of let's kumbaya and make peace and we'll just exchange some land, that this is not about a land issue. This is really about religion and ideology, and that for Israel to be strong, it has to maintain its presence in Judea and Samaria. That's on the military and security side, but also on the people side. There's almost 500,000 Israelis today living in Judea and Samaria. So there's also this whole aspect of the people already there, and it's part of the growth and development and the flowering. And lastly, it's been a sense that as the country is becoming more traditional, which is great, more traditionally Jewish, that the importance of Shiloh, the importance of Hebron, the importance of Gush Etzion, that these are all where the biblical stories have taken place. It's just a few of the names. And that Samaria is the heartland of the Jewish people. Judea and Samaria is the heartland. So, yes, I've seen that change. We see it, by the way, in the polls. We see it in the election movement here in the country. We see it in the number of housing starts. We see it on how the left is getting completely upset and don't even know what to do with themselves, because now they're facing a reality they've never had to face before. That is, the Israel population is starting to really think seriously about what sovereignty means.
Sovereignty in a biblical context is really what the nation is all about. A lot of people especially Christians, they tend to shy away from the P-political word because, well, as Christians, we're not to be engaged so much in a political kingdom, a political environment. But I'm sure we can both agree that if there's one country in the world where political is biblical, it's here in Israel, isn't
Correct.
it? And so when you're speaking about these things of traditional and returning back to tradition and roots, are you meaning that it's returning back to its biblical foundations, Shmuel?
Yeah, I actually believe it does. And we need to, I just want to put out one thing, is we're subjected to very often to what we call international pressure. We all get that pressure. Well, it's not legitimate. And I think we just have to remember that the international pressure is also about secularism. It's not about Christian values. If you look at what, for example, the European Union wants, they definitely do not want Christian values at all. They don't want Jewish values. So why are they dictating our terms of what really means sovereignty? And I agree with you. What you said is right on the point, which is that sovereignty means returning to our biblical roots in a way where we feel proud and we feel secure that we can establish what we have. And most of the Arabs in Judea and Samaria, when I say most, more than half the Arabs in Judea and Samaria themselves want Israeli sovereignty because they see, from a practical perspective, how corrupt the institutions of government are within Judea and Samaria, and they trust the Jews more than the Muslim Arabs because Jews understand what it means to be a minority. And for most of the listeners, they don't know this, but the only country which has a growing Christian population in the Middle East is the state of Israel.
Yeah.
It has been decimated throughout the Middle East. Some of the major core areas of the Middle East have been completely now eradicated of all Christians, intentionally done. Even in cities under the control of the Palestinian Authority, like Bethlehem, has gone from 70% Christian to what we think it may be 10%. Of course, the Palestinian Authority doesn't want. It's really a tragedy. And Christians should see that is a significance, not because necessarily you relate to someone living in Bethlehem, but because it connects to the promises that come out of the Bible, and that Bethlehem is a part of what are the promises of our sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. And so that's where I think it's coming from. And I think it makes sense for Christians to look at this as a way, and this is what you taught me, actually, Anthony, you taught this to me, that this is a critical aspect to really understanding how one's faith flourishes within the Christian structure and story, because that's really what it's about. I'm not asking, Anthony's not asking me to convert, I'm not asking him to convert, we're asking each other to be partners together in the realization of the promises of redemption of the Jewish people in the state and in the country of Israel, which involves Judea and Samaria as a critical aspect, which was actually promised to the Jews in the mandate after the Turks were defeated. All of Judea and Samaria was part of the Jewish mandate. It was only later taken from us during the unprovoked war by all the Arab countries in 1948 when we were formed.
Yeah, and Sam, I couldn't agree more with the fact that if we respect one another and we both have a faith and a love in God's Word, we know that God has a plan of redemption and He is going to bring it about. And the essential components of that is right here in Israel. Correct. And as a conclusion, as I was just even reading this morning in the book of Isaiah, where it says that God will even bring the Gentiles in to rebuild the walls of Israel, of Jerusalem. We see this is happening. We see there's many Christians that have got a passion, a zeal, a burden to want to be a part of what God is doing here in Israel. And there's many ways to do that. There's ways of blessing Israel. There's ways of coming here to help build, to help some, like Yehoval, they pick the grapes, they help with the farmers. But Sam, you and I know that there's got to be something more in the sense of the call for redemption, the call for sovereignty. What would you want to leave as a parting words for our Christian audience about what we can do, what we should be doing besides praying and helping our Jewish brothers and sisters?
Well, I think number one thing is to talk about it. I think talking to your Christian friends in your church, discussing it amongst them, becoming a representative of the Return of Israel Sovereignty movement to your colleagues and friends, that is really the number one, because this message cannot be just brought by the two of us. It has to be brought by the community.
Right.
So that's the first. The second is to advocate to your political connections. So your representatives, wherever you live in the world, that's also really important. They have to hear from you, because right now there's just a lot of noise out there, and it always sounds like the forces of darkness are the ones that have the loudest voice, and the voices of light, we're all busy with our lives. And so it's very important we don't turn supporting Israel into a profession the way certain anti-Israel agitation organizations turn that into it's a business, right. Exactly. So speaking to your representatives, any type of lobbying or efforts, writing letters, that would make a difference. And the third is to support financially. And there, we see this as really a connection. This is something about whatever comes out of your heart, whatever is the tithing of your heart. The truth is, any amount is really very valuable to us, and it also allows you to have a connection. We're thinking about this as actually that you become members of the sovereignty movement of Return, O Israel, that you join us in some form of a membership, so that you feel that connection on an ongoing basis. So those are the three ways I would try to get involved. And reading the blogs and the other material that Anthony's putting on. We're trying to put a lot of content and material and prayers and information, and trying to keep it very current, so that and you should share your thoughts on the website as well, so that starts to grow and develop for us.
Very good point, and exactly. If you have something that you would like to share with us, we would be more than interested to have you write to us or contact us by phone or whatever. So thank you for watching, and thank you, Shmuel, for all your help and assistance. And may God's redemption come quickly to Jerusalem, to Zion. Amen. God bless you.